Hey, what's going on? My name is Eric, and in today's video, what I want to talk about is buying a vehicle when you're an extra tall person, right? So maybe you're a tall can of corn like myself, and I'm 6'5.5", and if you needed visual proof, because I'm sitting in a chair right now, this is me going into an actual bathroom in my house that I hit my head on probably about once a month. I just kind of scrape the top of my head on the door frame, which is wonderful. But, you know, I'm not going to complain too much because being tall has its perks, but definitely when you're trying to purchase a vehicle, it can be tough. So what I want to do in this video is not only look at different vehicles and classes of vehicles, but also give you some quick tips and tricks that you may not be aware of when you're purchasing a vehicle. So first tip I'm going to give you right now. Now, you want to consider the way your body is as far as proportionally, right? Some people have long legs and shorter torsos. Some people are kind of proportional, and some people may have a longer torso. So I'm going to put my measurements on the screen right now. So that may be helpful for you, because what I'm going to do in the next video is actually show me getting in and out of different vehicles so you can get an idea of that. But if you have a long torso, what you want to consider is the headroom, right? Of course you want to consider headroom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line above my head here. And what that line represents is the height of the vehicle, the roof. Now, if you had two identical vehicles, same year, same make and model, but one of them had a sunroof, as you can imagine, the sunroof may have a little bit less headroom. It's something that you may not have considered, but what happens when they add a sunroof to a vehicle, they actually bring the roof of the vehicle down a few inches to accommodate for the mechanisms that are going to be necessary for that sunroof. I probably like the sun so much because I live in Buffalo, New York, and I never get to see it, but a sunroof is probably not a good idea for you as a taller individual. So the second tip that I want to give you, and this one may or may not seem obvious to you, but when you're looking at your leg room and how far your legs are going into the dash, one thing you may want to consider is upgrading a vehicle with a push button start. Now it seems kind of silly, but just having a key in a ignition, whether it be going into the steering column or right into the dash, that's going to create a little bit extra frustration for you because that key might be something you're going to hit with your knee. So these are two things that you may want to consider when you are looking to purchase a vehicle. And I'm going to get into some other tips and tricks later in this video. But what I want to talk about right now is what we're looking at on the screen here. And this was a website I found called vehiclecharts.com. And what we're looking at is a comparison of SUVs from 2017. Now it is 2020 as of making this video, but I am personally looking at buying a used SUV. The reason for that is obviously, you know, the depreciation of cars, that first 3 years, they depreciate quite a bit. If you can go like 3 to 5 years out, you're going to get more bang for your buck. But also in my situation is I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. I used to be able to drive a car relatively easily. I may not have fit in it as good as I would with an SUV, but now that I have kids and car seats in the back seat, it's a little bit more difficult. I think that's something that you should consider because depending on your stage in life, you could either potentially have kids on the horizon or maybe grandchildren on the horizon, and then all of a sudden having a car seat matters to you. Now, I wouldn't personally mind going with a minivan, but it's this weird shift that has happened in like the last 10 years where, in my personal opinion, a lot of women say no to the minivan where the guy's like, I don't care. I actually made a funny little graphic about it and threw it up on Facebook, and a lot of my friends agree with it where their wives are naysaying the minivan. But my wife does make a good point in that she tells me, you don't mind buying the minivan, but you don't want to drive the minivan. It's kind of like that Seinfeld reference on taking a reservation. So what we're looking at here are full-size SUVs. Now, the downsides of a full-size SUV is they're going to be probably the most expensive, right? Each one of these are going to be way more expensive than the crossover or mid-size SUVs, and you're also going to spend more on gas. For me, gas isn't that big of a deal. I'm a YouTuber, I work from home, I'm not really driving that much, but I am concerned about the price point of buying a used SUV if it's a full-size SUV. Now, if we go up a little bit, these mid-size SUVs, I can tell you, I've sat in all of these, and these do not fit for me. The mid-size SUVs is probably not a good idea. Same thing is gonna go for compact SUVs. The word compact is probably not in our vernacular, so let's just skip over that. So here we have full-size crossovers and minivans. I'm gonna skip this for now and come back to it, just because I wanted to highlight mid-size crossovers. I mean, if you're 6'2", 6'3", none of these are really going to work well for you. You're just not going to have enough space. I mean, I got into a Nissan Murano and it was comical. I could barely get my knees into the dash. Honda Pilot, a little bit more room, but still tough for me. I mean, it's called midsize for a reason. If you go up a little bit higher, that's where you're kind of getting your compact crossovers. If you're not familiar, crossover just kind of merges a car with an SUV a little bit. This might be helpful, and the reason I would prefer to stay with a crossover is when I'm lifting a little kid into the car, car. It's going to be much easier in a full-size crossover as compared to like a full-size SUV where I'm going to be having to lift that kid up much higher into the vehicle. One of the things that I have found is the Ford Explorer, I believe, to be the roomiest, and I will do a follow-up video at the end of this video showing me sitting in these different vehicles to give you an idea of what the headroom looks like and what the legroom looks like. But when you are looking at any one of these vehicles, that may work for you. Now, another tip too is if you can get a vehicle with telescoping steering, right? So you're going to be able to adjust it up and down, in and out, and then also adjustable pedals. This is going to make it so that you're going to have more room and be able to fit better in the vehicle. So these are all things you'll want to consider as you're going out to purchase a vehicle. So now what I'm going to do is this video on the screen here, I'm going to show myself in all these different vehicles so you can get an idea of what somebody my size looks like, and maybe you can have a better idea of how you'll fit in that vehicle too. So you can really reduce the amount of time you need to spend buying a vehicle, because you're just going to realize 95% of them aren't going to work. So I will catch you in this next video.